Today is June 5th, 2020, approximately 10 and a half days after the murder of George Floyd. And I've been wanting to make a broadcast about this, but with the extreme range of emotions, pretty much every emotion that is possible besides happiness, every emotion, frustration, anger, grief, sadness, hopelessness, relief that it wasn't me, but no, the knowledge that it could have been. I have no words for such an unthinkable act happening to a human being. But I also know that, and I'm sickened by the fact that this is an act that has become commonplace in our society. And we're looking at America in a different way. A place that we thought would be the leader, or with symbols, of leadership and liberty and human rights all over the country, and now we see the ugly truth. And I think as the anger and disgust and hopelessness that I feel have subsided a little, not much, but a little, I take a wider view to how such a situation came to be. And what crossed my mind, I've been touched by the outcry and the protests that have happened around the world, in England, in Canada, Australia, I heard about as well. But I think what brings us to this place? What small act of carelessness or hatred, feeling of hatred, brings us to the place where we disregard our own humanity? And I thought of Meghan Markle and how the tabloids and press used her to sell papers and bullied her and her husband to the point where they decided that they needed to, a part of the most powerful family in the UK decided they needed to immigrate to another country to feel free. It's ironic, and I'm sure a lot of those people who were texting and trolling, whether it be on Instagram or social media, or encouraging the press to print scandalous or degrading posts, didn't realize that all of that thinking, all of that segregating and discriminating and superiority complex contributes to the same thing. You know, some people say unkind things and other people act on them. But it can be one and the same. It comes from the same place of hate. And I think of my brothers and sisters who have nothing to live for in Africa, a country that is the most wealthiest country in resources, one of the most wealthiest countries that you can imagine. And the people living there not being able to feed their own kids. So they're willing to risk their lives and hop in a boat and journey across treacherous waters and arrive in what seems to be a place of hope, a new land. They arrive in places like Italy, and these stories have been wiped from the media, but when I was living there, I saw articles on how those boats get turned back into the ocean and how the people drown. I've seen the images live and direct on YouTube. They're disappeared now, but of people grasping onto other people's clothes and shoes, trying to stay at the top of a sinking ship. And as usual, there's always someone with a mobile phone nearby to record it, but there's no one nearby to stop it, as was the case of George Floyd, who should be here today, but he's not. And I think of, the plight of those immigrants, and I hear stories of people in Syria who's also had to flee their country. I know one, actually, one of my students. And I recently heard more about the plight of the Palestinian people who can't leave the country and can't own the land that they live on either. So they're put in, I guess, a ghetto of sorts, with no options. Violence and injustice creates more violence and injustice. And I think of the natives of America. They don't call themselves, recently, the change is not native. The politically correct way, I should say, is not Native American. It's become natives. And to know that right now they are standing on the front line of a protest of several oil lines that are going to be put through, on and through what is supposed to be their land. And they're fighting, not only to stop the removal of their land, but putting this dangerous oil line on the land, which, if it explodes, which has happened in the past, is really harmful to the environment. So they're fighting for that. And I've recently watched a documentary about how the land that was given to them has been systematically taken away piece by piece. And so here we have these people who are living on land that they cannot develop. They cannot build their schools, their houses, their future on this land because they are allowed to live on it, and only that, which is insane when you think about it, but that's how the system works. And so injustice is all over. It's all over, and it takes many forms, which is the point I'm trying to make. It goes from bullying to saying, let's keep those people out, to saying, let's keep those people in, but give them no resources to better themselves or have hope in a better future for their children. And so I'm not saying anything that's new or that people don't already know. Probably, you already know these issues, but I'm just drawing a line to how they all correlate to a human condition, a human sickness that looks the other way while people are suffering, and at the very heart of it, profits from the suffering of others. There's been so much talk about Mexicans taking jobs in America, and trust me, you wouldn't want those jobs, and you certainly wouldn't want the salary that they have to accept to survive. What could be done to change that? No one is asking that question because some very wealthy people stand to gain from the status quo. And that's just how the society works right now. And the hope is that this young generation that is out there protesting and marching for the horrific murder of George Floyd will be able to change the minds of their children, the minds of their parents even, because I am sure, absolutely sure, that a lot of them come from homes that may be either wealthy or middle class, whose parents sit on the boards of these institutions that have consistently discriminated against people that they feel that they are superior to. And that's just it. It all comes from that superiority and thinking that someone else, I actually taught this in a lesson today, the word, what was the word? But thinking that you're superior and others are inferior. I think it was snobby. But of course, snobby is much, much milder in comparison to what we're talking about. And I know that I've heard many of these people who claim to be Christian and God-fearing say that this is acceptable. The status quo is acceptable. And we'll do nothing to change it. And that happened for 400 years while slavery existed. People went to church and hugged each other and sang songs about love one another, and then went home to beat their slaves. It's unthinkable, but it's real. So my take on all of this is that we need to really think about how we treat one another, how we perceive one another. And I put a strong emphasis on that to the Black community. Yes, you're angry. Yes, the resources that you feel you earned or had some potential to get, or the equal rights weren't there for you, basically. But you can't turn on each other and fight and kill each other, because you are all you have. When it comes down to it, you can't expect the other communities, because I didn't see yes, there was Black, there was white, but I didn't see Indian and Asian coming out, sticking their neck out, because they have a system that they keep their money within their small communities. Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. I'm not going to judge. But if we had a system where we could elect people who represent us and put in power a system where of police officers, of like have our own police. I know that's a radical idea to keep our community safe. Then we wouldn't have to look to outside sources to help us, because it's going to take a long time. I'm sorry, but I don't believe it's going to happen overnight. And I'm really not sure if these 4 men will be convicted. And if they are, I have to educate my friends of all races that there are not only these 4 men that committed this crime, but there are thousands of police officers that are shooting people of color, and more recently, also white people, every day. Every day. And there has been chronicles and websites keeping track of the number of people that have been killed executioner style. One horrific article I read recently, I've been trying to educate myself more about what's been going on. And I read a horrific article about a neighbor who's concerned that the young lady that lived next to them hadn't been seen in a few days. So I don't know what the situation was with this neighbor, why they didn't go over to the house and check, but they called the police and they said, please check on my neighbor. I haven't seen her in a few days. I don't know if she's home or whatnot. And the police came, but did not knock on her door, they went to her bedroom window, and when she came to the window, opened fire and shot her several times. The result was that, well, of course, the officers were not prosecuted or punished in any way, but the young lady was playing a video game. And I guess to you video game lovers, gamers out there, know how engrossed you can get into a video game. And to think that I also thought about the paramedics coming to the scene. They're the ones that have to clean up this mess. So I would really love to hear some of the paramedics and hospital officials speaking out on this, because that's a big mess that they have to deal with, going to sites of people's homes and picking up their bodies. Where do you take someone that's been, splattered all over their own house while they were playing a video game? What do you do with that body? And how can you see that and not report foul play? So there is a system in place that goes from anyone who sees something is not right and keeps silent about it because it's normal to see that. And so that goes from the paramedics to the police department to the State Department, the so-called justice system, who says, okay, we won't prosecute this, we'll look the other way, to the senators and Congress who said, okay, anytime you stay silent when something horrific happens, you are part of that problem. You are part of that system. And what the American people in London, Canada, everyone who has protested is saying now is that this system is not right, and this system does not represent all of us. And enough is enough. And you get those internet trolls and bullies who want to come and make it all about them and say, hey, you shouldn't be so emotional, and let's look at the negative aspect of, the people that came out to loot. And I'll tell you this, those criminals that came out to loot, that's who they are. Those are people that just came there to take advantage of a peaceful protest. And they need to, it would be great if the protesters had their own policing system to stop those people that came and try to take advantage of the situation, so that they could go into the electronics store and get their own little knickknacks. But anyway, with anything you try to do good, there is always bad people that get involved in it. But we can't focus on them. We have to focus on what we are fighting for, and that is change. We're fighting for change. We're fighting for the realization that all of us, all black, white, green, because I've seen some hateful messages from my fellow black people, of course. Green, orange. Okay, we don't have green and orange people, but you know what I mean. all of us have prejudices. All of us maybe want to discriminate and exclude people from our social circle. Why? And this is a psychological thing that I've been doing a lot of reading on lately. The idea of scarcity. The idea is that we don't have enough. So in order to get enough, we have to take it from somewhere else. We have to take it from someone else. We have to put systems in place that rape and abuse and exploit other countries. And we have systems like the World Bank that gives loans to criminals so that they can police and murder their own people who go against them for the sake of greed. So when is that going to stop? When is enough enough? When can people realize that I am not hurting them? I'm hurting myself every time I look away and pretend that wrong is okay. It's not okay. And I think for the first time in a long time, people felt the knee on their neck, the knee of suffocation that was dealt to George Floyd, an ordinary man, just like you or I, who went out on an ordinary day. I just think of people. I don't smoke, so I would say going out for a coffee on the corner store and being and then I'm dead. It could just take 30 seconds to think of yourself in that situation. And it makes it so much more difficult to understand how someone could do that when we're here in this COVID-19 scenario, and everyone has to realize that their life is a lot more fragile than they thought it was. Now, more than 1 million people have died. I haven't looked at the recent numbers. And a lot of the reasons for those deaths is carelessness, is, okay, it's over in that country, it's not going to happen to us. And even though it happened to those countries, time and time again, people said, oh, it didn't happen to me, I stayed at home, so maybe I'm stronger than those people over there. It only happens to those people over there. So let's go out and let's stop taking precautions. Let's continue to get back to normal and everything will be okay. Maybe it wasn't as bad as they said it was. Over 1 million people dead. And you think it's not as bad as they said it was? What does it take for human beings to realize that they are not immune to illness? Maybe you just get it like the flu. That is possible. But maybe you also pass it on to someone that you love. Is that worth the risk? What is it going to take for human beings to stop saying, not me, it's them? and care. Care about who you might pass COVID-19 on to, even though you don't have symptoms. Care about like I said, the natives and the indigenous people in your country. Because I have been all over Asia and been told by Asians themselves that the indigenous people of those countries, including Japan, had dark skin. And they are now pushed into the mountains somewhere where no one sees them and no one knows how they're surviving. And I talked to a student recently from Peru, same story. People with darker skin are getting pushed out of their homeland and treated like lesser human beings. This all comes from the same place, not me. It doesn't affect me, but it affects all of us. It affects all of us. Please, people, realize that those people contribute to your society. They contribute to your economy. And there is enough to go around. We don't all want the same dream. We don't all like the same vegetables. You like bananas. I like apples. So if we both have a garden and grow different things, we both can eat. There's no need to kill and maim people because you are afraid they're going to take what's yours. Maybe the reason you don't have enough is because you don't give enough. That's just my thoughts on the matter. Rest in peace, George Floyd. I hope that your pain will not go in vain. Your death will not be in vain. And the world will come to realize the mistakes that all of us have made every time we think that we are better than someone else because of education, because of the way we speak, because of the language we speak, because of where we came from. Don't do it. Don't be a bully. Don't troll on the internet looking for people to hate on. Don't call people names because they don't look as attractive as you thought they should, or they're overweight, or don't do it. Be a better human being. Please. Everyone, think about it. Bye.